Most small businesses don't even realize their brand has this big of a problem. They've built all of their marketing around a logo and not a person. Yeah, the company posts and it shares things and it talks about its services, but all of it is faceless. But the real person, the founder who has all of the expertise, the vision, the knowledge, they're nowhere to be found. And that worked for a long time. People even felt like that was more valuable because if you hid behind a logo, you must be more legit, right? But it doesn't work the same way anymore because buyers have completely changed their behavior. When buyers research, especially in the B2B space, they want to see the actual person behind the business. They look up the founder, they look up the leadership team. They want to see if the people behind that business actually know what they're talking about. If they can't find a real voice behind that brand, trust is so much harder to build, the sales cycle will slow down, and you become so much harder to differentiate in your industry. In a market full of logos, they all look the same, but not the founder. So, in this video, I want to break down a shift that I call the founder facing brand, why I believe it works, the data behind it, as well as exactly how to do it. Before we actually get into this whole idea of a founder facing brand, let's really talk about what's actually shifting in the market and the buyer behaviors that are changing. The reason a founder facing brand I believe is so important right now is not just because I like it as a trendy marketing idea, but because buyer behavior has significantly changed, especially in the past few years. One of my favorite data points is from the Edelman and LinkedIn collaboration that they did. This is about 2 years ago, I believe. And there were so many amazing data points that came out of this that really showing how B2B buyers actually make their decisions. And this is one of the most important. According to that study, 52% of decision makers and 54% of C-suite executives spend an hour or more every day consuming thought leadership content. The reason they do this isn't just for consumption's sake. It's to figure out who they actually trust, who knows what they're talking about, and who is serious in that industry and in that space. So when they go looking for a solution or when they go looking for a buy, when they need something, they've already consumed a lot of content and they feel like they already kind of know who the players are and who's important. These are really, really important factors to take into consideration because that content is not coming from company pages. They aren't trying to consume things from companies. They want to actually find out the real leadership in the space that they're looking to buy in. They're looking for expert perspectives. I think that's really the term to use. They're not looking for ad or product pages or company pages. They want to find out who the real experts are in a space, what they have to say, and who they feel like they can trust the most. That's who they end up awarding their business to. So that same research found out something really interesting too. 75% of decision makers said a piece of thought leadership content led them to research a company they were not previously considering. What's super interesting about that is that means it's not just helping to nurture demand, it's actually creating it too. So when you have a founder who is out front showing their expertise, their insights, their knowledge, they aren't just fostering somebody who already has a need, who's already looking for it. They might actually be creating one in a buyer that didn't even realize they needed that thing yet. But once again, the most important factor here is all of this data points to individual expertise. These people are not going and consuming content from company pages unless they're massive companies. But I'm talking to small businesses right now. I'm talking to small businesses, startups, and solopreneurs. That's who I work with primarily and founders of those companies. You might be able to compete with just a logo or a company brand at the highest levels of a business. But when you're a small business, startup, solopreneur, you have to differentiate yourself in a different way. And the best way to do that is through your individuality, your own knowledge, your expertise, your subject matter know-how. This is why faceless brands are struggling more and will continue to struggle even more going forward. It's because of this buyer behavior. Maybe you built a company, a small business, you are launching a startup, even you're just a solopreneur and you are a consultant. You created a service, you created a product, you created a company, and you did all that without really being out front, which isn't necessarily wrong. It's just that with the shift in behavior, you're not going to get the results you once did. And you are leaving so much money and opportunity on the table by staying hidden. Your thinking, your perspective, your value, it's not really visible. And that's where your differentiation comes from. When buyers evaluate companies, once again, they are looking for signs of credibility. And that can be through social media content, that can be through articles, that can be through podcast appearances, media appearances. There's all different ways to demonstrate that you actually know what you're talking about. But that's what people are looking for. They're looking to understand who you are, what you do, and what you actually know in order to be able to decide if you're the right fit for them or not. I think this is especially true of B2B. And I love this study that Edelman also did is their hidden buyer report. If you've heard of that, 71% of buyers have little to no direct interaction with sales during their evaluation process. That is insane. That means that their decision, the sale, it's largely been decided before they ever even move forward or have a conversation. That's just the last kind of formality. Most people are not having a really long sales process anymore, even from a B2B perspective. Obviously, the higher ticket price the service is, the more, elite the service is, that does change and that does differ. But in general, people are looking you up, they're comparing things, and they're kind of already making their decision. And they're just talking to you at the end to put their final stamp of approval on something or to differentiate between two options. At the very, very end, they couldn't quite decide. People are largely making these decisions on their own by what they can see in their online perception. 95% of those buyers said strong thought leadership made them more receptive to outreach from that company later. So let's say that, somebody comes across your content, your website, your subject matter expertise, however that's displayed, and they're very, very interested. They don't quite move forward. That means they're going to be even more warm and ready to move forward potentially in a few months if they've already seen all of that. And buyers are showing this behavior pretty regularly. I also have found over and over again that I will talk with somebody and they'll end up reaching back out to me first because they saw content I was producing. This recently happened to me with a client. We were talking for a while. That kind of paused. It kind of stopped. A couple months later, they actually brought up my content, like what you're putting out right now is awesome. I want to talk again. And they've signed on as a client. This happens very regularly. It definitely is the top of mind idea, but it's also just the fact that you're showing over and over again, I'm a legitimate person. I know what I'm talking about. I am credible. I can help you. I am trustworthy. The founders that are visible are going to earn so much more trust early in the buying journey. And we know for a fact that that is a really, really important piece to getting that close. Okay, if you're pushing back on this at all, I can imagine why. You're probably thinking, okay, if this works so well, why haven't so many other people done it by now? Why haven't all kinds of people in my space or other small business owners I know, why haven't they made this shift? Here are a couple of reasons I think why. Number one, I do think the awareness around this has just not been as widespread. I do think when I'm talking about these things, people tend to agree and they tend to, kind of hear my point of view and are like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I haven't really thought about it, but now that you bring it up, it makes sense. So I think it's kind of an awareness piece. People, when they hear it, it makes a lot of sense that faceless brands, especially at the small business and startup level, are not going to perform as well. And they understand that having a subject matter expert, the founder, a leader out front, having a human face to the brand does make a big difference. And when people start using this method, they really see that it makes a big difference, especially in how their content performs. So I think there's just an awareness piece. That's number one. But number two, I think people are so afraid of being seen as influencers or becoming some sort of like creator or something like that. Because most founders and most business owners, they started something to create an asset for themselves that can grow. Maybe they can sell one day, that can run maybe without them to a degree, or they aren't really interested in being super out front. So I understand that, but I also think it's a misunderstanding of what I actually want people to do with their personal brands. It's not about becoming an influencer, but having influence. And there is a big difference there. If you can think about, instead of it being about you having visibility, it's just about making your thoughts, ideas, knowledge, expertise visible. That is actually what's going to help people trust your business more, create more opportunity for your business, and make things easier to close. Okay, so how do you actually pivot to a founder-facing brand? I call this the 5 Ps of a founder personal brand. And you don't want to just start posting randomly and putting stuff out there. You want to have a real strategy. And the 5 Ps will help you develop that so that you can start creating a personal brand that brings more visibility, trust, and opportunity to your business. Number 1 is position. You need to decide what you want to be known for, not your title, not just being the founder of your company, although that will give you some credibility and that will be good, but the actual lane you want to be in. As an example, I own a marketing agency, I own a marketing company, but my lane specifically as a founder, and obviously I use my founder personal brand to bring attention to my company, to channel, to route clients to my business. All of that's true, but where I really focus very specifically is on founder-facing brands, on founder personal brands, helping founders build powerful personal brands that help grow their companies. That's my core message right there. And everything I talk about is around the founder personal brand. It's around the content. It's around the spaces to occupy. It's around how to get started. It's why it even matters, the difference that it can make in your business. I talk about all those things. I also talk about wellness and health for founders so they can show up well when they try to build this personal brand. Because if you're not taking care of the person behind the brand, it's going to be really hard to build a personal brand. These are the things that I focus on, and I know what I want to be known for. I want to be known for helping founders kind of step into their power, step into their light, and be able to not be afraid of being out front to help grow their companies. I, for so long, was so afraid of doing this for myself, for the Breezy company, my company. I realized that that was really silly, but it was also really hard to get started, and I didn't really know what to do. And when I started getting into this idea and I started doing the research and seeing all the data pointing towards this, I started getting really, really passionate about it and started working on it for myself. But then I wanted to help other founders see that if I can do it and I can be building this, and I'm still in progress too, I'm still learning, I'm still doing this all the time. But if I can help other founders do what I am figuring out along the way as well, that would be a really cool thing to do. And the bonus, of course, is that it brings all kinds of attention to my business as well. So know what you want to be known for, be very clear on that, and figure that out from the start. Number two is pillars. And I know people are kind of in and out on content pillars right now, but this isn't necessarily just content. This is just the main topics that you, again, want to be known for. So, yes, it will determine your content strategy. It will determine what you talk about. It will determine what kinds of posts that you create across your different socials. But it also is going to dictate, what you talk about when you're asked on podcasts or when you're asked to contribute in an article or when you go do a keynote or you speak at a webinar. These are the main core topics, again, that you want to be known for. For me, once again, it's helping founders build powerful personal brands that help grow their companies. I also really want to be known for taking care of the person behind the personal brand, the health, the wellness, the longevity of that person, and ultimately realizing that small businesses and startups can compete better within their industries and even with the bigger guys in their spaces when they differentiate themselves with a human out front. These are the topics I talk about all the time. I say them in all kinds of different ways, but consistently I'm creating content in these main kind of topics. And I have tons of subtopics and stuff too, but figuring out exactly what your pillars of your brand are going to be. And of course that flows into content, but it's more of the pillars that kind of hold up what you want to become. Number three is point of view. And this might be the most important because this is actually where you differentiate yourself. Point of view is the whole point of having a founder out front. Any company can create generic company content and it mostly is going to sound like everybody else in your industry. It's not going to be that different. But when a founder actually has the wherewithal to get out front, they're going to show their unique point of view. And you do have a unique point of view, whether you realize it or not. You know things that other people don't know. You have seen things that other people don't see in the industry. You see kind of interesting gaps where other people haven't seen them yet. And these are the things that you should be talking about. You need to figure out what your unique point of view in your space is. That's what I figured out early on, is that I felt like in general, in the small business and startup kind of world, people are not really talking about how founders need to be out front. Now, personal branding is getting some traction now, and that is being talked about, but I still don't see it talked about in a very specific way that I am, where founders of already existing companies or already existing businesses are not putting themselves out front and continue to hide behind their logo. And this is actually hindering their growth. It's hurting their business and it's not going to work going forward. That was sort of the gap that I saw. And that's what I talk about. And that's my unique point of view. Now, am I the only person in the world that talks about that? Of course not. But that is where I am coming from my unique point of view. You need to decide what that is for you and exactly how you want to position yourself from that perspective. Number four is proof. You need stories, lessons, you need case studies, you need all of these things that show that you know what you're talking about. So for me, I constantly talk about client stories. I talk about what I'm actually doing, how I'm actually doing it. I prove all of that in my content. I have real case studies on my website of exactly how I've worked with founders and have worked with business owners doing these exact things. All of this stuff just builds more credibility towards my personal brand and shows that I know what I'm talking about and that I'm trying to constantly learn. It's not just that I have it all figured out and that you have to have it all figured out either. And it doesn't have to all just be success stories. It also can be, hey, I failed doing this and I think I'm going to try this next because that didn't work. Or I'm trying this and I have no idea what's going to happen, but come along with me for the journey. That creates just as much trust, quite honestly, as a success story because it feels real and it feels like you're willing to let people in during that journey. Number five is the path. Whatever you talk about in your personal brand, it needs to naturally flow into your business. That's the whole point of why you're doing this, right? Whether you are building a personal brand to specifically try to bring in visibility, opportunity, and attention to a current business you have, or even I work with a lot of multi-venture founders. So they might only have one business right now, but they want to start several other things. So we're building their personal brand as an individual entity, if you will, of course, to bring, attention to their current business, but also to set them up to be, a serial entrepreneur, to be a multi-venture founder, to be able to start other things and not confuse their audience. And it's very obvious that they would go start these other things because it makes sense with their personal brand and they can use that and leverage that to go start those other other things, but you just need to decide exactly what that is for you in either direction and then figure out the path forward. So when you're creating content, when you're deciding what podcast to be on, when you are, doing webinars, whatever the situation may be, you just need to decide, how does this continue to shape my brand that then pushes people towards the businesses that I'm trying to push them towards, or even creates individual revenue for yourself. That might become a reality for you as well, whether it's through sponsored content, whether it's through other partnerships. There's all kinds of other possibilities from an individual perspective that you could generate revenue as well. So just constantly thinking about how you align your personal brand towards revenue goals. You're not going to ever just create just to create or just to create visibility, although those are important things. How does this actually attach itself and create a path towards new revenue? If you're a founder who built their business quietly behind the scenes, I know how scary it can be to try to put yourself out there first, but just understand the market already wants this. This is already happening. People are already shifting towards this behavior, and you have to take advantage of it if you want your business to continue to thrive. Buyers want perspective, they want insight, and you have those things. So it's time to step out from behind the logo and show them what you know. When the founder becomes visible, the company becomes easier to trust. And the more trust you have, the more growth that's possible. If you liked this video or it was helpful for you, or you're interested in learning more about building a powerful personal brand as a founder, be sure to like this video, subscribe to this channel, and come follow me on my other socials as well. I'm on LinkedIn as well as Instagram. Everything is linked below. Can't wait to hear from you.